This is Notorious TID, and you are watching, listening, enjoying, loving, living, and laughing to Talk Solid Wrestling.
Okay, with all due respect to one Colt Cabana, he gets a lot of credit for being like the godfather of pro wrestling podcasters. But those of us in the know, and those of us from especially a certain geographic area, know that's not really true. The true story behind it is that it's you. You're the OG pro wrestling podcaster. And I have to ask where this started, because when you started doing podcasting wasn't a thing.
No.
So I want to ask about how you guys conceptualized this idea, how it all came about.
So here's how it happened, Adam. And it's wild because you're going all the way back to like 90, 96, I think. And a couple of Canadian guys by the name of Jeff Merrick, who went by Gentleman Jeff Merrick at the time, and George Strombolopoulos. Some of you might be familiar with him, and another gentleman by the name of Bob Makowicz Jr. They used to do a show called Game, the anti-sports show. And this was a thing that was being mulled around. And there was a gentleman by the name of John Walters who was starting an endeavor called Virtually Canadian, which was an online radio station. That's podcasting before it was even called that. So there was only a couple of these things all around. And this was the first one in Canada, pretty much one of the first ones in North America. I think there was one down in New York that was doing some station stuff as well. And he put these people together and put all of these different shows on. And these guys went to my co-host at the time, Donnie, who does a podcast now with Jimmy Corderas, WWE referee Jimmy Corderas, called Huge Pop. Doing great things. Good on them. And they came to him about doing a show about wrestling. And he was like, oh, I don't know. And then he came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this show about professional wrestling? And I said, well, I mean, okay, cool. Sounds like fun. Are we filtered? Nope. I could say what I want. Yep. This is late 90s. This is like Attitude Era. This is ECW at its peak. This is nobody giving two S's about anything. Wait, hold on. Can we?
Tid, the floor is yours, sir. You're a legend here. I would not even dare try to censor you. Come on.
All right. So nobody gave two hoots about what was going on back then. I'm just kidding. So I was like, cool, no problem. And they didn't care what we said, what we did. They even went to us because they were like, we don't know how to sell you guys. We don't know how to do anything with you guys. If you guys can go make money doing this, get sponsors, it's all yours, 100%. I said, are there limits to who I can talk to? They're like, no, because we don't know anything. I said, perfect. Boom. I went into downtown Toronto and I found a place, a website company, because this is all online stuff, a website company that was promoting their product and got them to agree to be a sponsor for us, a headline sponsor for $5,000 a month back then. It was a company called Smutland. And it was an entire porn site. They had a warehouse space down in what is known as Liberty Village area in Toronto, downtown Toronto. They would send girls to the studio to do live reads, to hang out, to do whatever we wanted. And we made this thing as ridiculous and crazy as you could imagine. And it blew up. It absolutely blew up to the point where Virtually Canadian couldn't handle it anymore. They moved the show over to terrestrial radio over at Fan 590, at which point I was getting very busy with wrestling as well. And I was kind of asked nicely in a wonderful way. We had a perfectly adult conversation that I didn't have the time to do it. And it would be in the best interest of everybody if I didn't do it, because this mouth would have got everybody fired on terrestrial radio. That is an absolute fact. So it was great. It was perfect. It worked out for me. I got off to do, went off to do what I needed to do. And Colt Cabana started doing podcasts. Dope.
Does it ever make you upset when people
No,
talk about Cabana as like, oh, he's the guy that started it all, when really it was you?
no, no, it doesn't upset me at all. I listen, here's the thing. I've kind of grown up my entire life being a shadow dude. You know what I mean? You can go over and you can check out some of my own podcast stuff over on my TID Talk channel on YouTube, where I talk about this. I talk about my upbringing. I talk about from a very young age how we traveled around an awful lot. Yes, I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, but we traveled around an awful lot. We were all up and down the West Coast until I had to go back to Nevada, until I got into trouble, until I ended up in another country of Canada. And that's a completely different story. And you ain't got enough time on this show for that one, son.
Have to be a multi-parter on that one someday. And maybe locked behind a paywall.
Absolutely. There's some great stories there too. I'll tell you
I
what.
bet.
But what were we fucking talking about?
Well, we're just talking about how
Oh,
it doesn't bother you so much when
no.
people
Right.
mistake you for not being the originator when you really are.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Like, cause I was always used to just kind of like do my thing, move along, do my thing, move along, do my thing, move along. All growing up, that was just the way that it was. So when this happened, I was cool. I'm much happier knowing that it got set up for success and I had a part of it and nobody's bugging me about it. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? The people that know, and that's cool. If people need to get credit for stuff, that's cool too, man. I ain't here to piss on anybody's parade. Go out there, have a great time, milk it. Say you started it. Say you didn't even know who I was. Say I wasn't. The show Live Audio Wrestling wasn't even in existence. Everybody knows that it was. But go ahead. It doesn't matter. They're words, just like a wrestling promo, Adam. Just like a wrestling promo. They're just words. They don't mean shit. It's all bullshit, Adam. It's all bullshit. This right here, it's all bullshit.
And with that ringing endorsement, I do want to quickly ask a follow-up question, which is that has anybody ever come up to you that you never expected was a listener of the show, or that kind of surprised you that they were fans of it and kind of blew your mind a bit?
Um, the first time that Owen Hart said it, that he was a fan
Wow.
of the show. Yeah. Yeah. And he was kind of our premise into the back door of WWE as well. You know what I mean? He was the kind of the guy that would like put us over and was like, these guys are okay. That was cool.
No doubt about that. How did that happen? Like, were you having a chance encounter with them? Did you hear through the grapevine secondhand? How did that come
We had
about?
done it. We had done a couple of things. We were on the mix of like, we would get a fax weekly from WWE headquarters in the States or in Canada as well. Shout out Carl DeMarco. Whoop, what's up, fat man? Um, we would get these faxes and they played really nice with us because we were the only ones that were doing it. The very first interview was Ron Simmons. They showed up at the studio with a limo. He was fantastic, and they just kept feeding us guys, right? But it was really hard, like when we would go to an event, just to get anybody on board to be like, hey, let the boys know, instead of like just us being stooges for doing some show that like here's the time and temperature of pro wrestling. That's not really what we were about. We needed the boys to know that, like, listen, we're smart enough to know what's up. You know what I mean? And he was the guy that kind of like let everybody know. We were at, I mean, it was probably Skydome at the time, there, and we were kind of backstage, just kind of like lost, not doing a whole hell of a lot. And he was like, come on, let's go, you know? And Owen kind of like, and from that point on, which is really tough when you think about it, like, cause I'm a big enough guy as it is. And Donnie, Big Daddy Donnie is like, he's as tall as a giraffe's eyeballs and built like a wind chime back then. So like you couldn't miss him. You know what I mean? So it was kind of tough, and it was a big shout out to him, and something that I'll never forget. But that's for me. That's not for other people. You know what I mean?
Absolutely fair. Let's go back to something you said a moment ago, which is you didn't want to be a show that just took the time and temperature of what was going on in the wrestling world at this time. You wanted to be more inside. You wanted people to know that you guys knew what you were talking about on this show. How did that come together? Was it something you guys instantly knew right off the hop? This is what the show is, or did you guys have to struggle a little bit with the concept of it a little bit more?
I think it was we really just kind of sat down and threw everything up against the wall and saw what would stick. So when the show first started, the very first episode, it wasn't even called The Law. It was called Slam, the wrestling show. And then within 6.8 seconds of Slam finding out about it, we got a letter from Greg Oliver. And so we all sat down and said, we're okay, let's come up with a name. And we sat at the table and everybody's trying to come up with these names and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting there nice and quiet and I'm just going over in my head and I'm like, what do we do? What is this? It's a live show. It's wrestling. It's audio. It's the law. They're like, what? I go, it's the law. We are the law of what we do here. We are the epitome of what we do. We are the final answer. Oh, why the law? I go, also, it's an acronym. Live audio wrestling. Everybody's like, oh, boom. That was it. So from that point, it became like, okay, we need to have fun. So we did comedy bits. You know what I mean? But a lot of the time it was like comedy bit, interview, news. And the news was always met with a bit of an insider approach to it, but not to the point of giving away the business. Even back then, it always was very clear to me from the people that you met and the people that were willing to put you over, there's a reason for it. Just like it is today. You've been around a wrestling locker room long enough, and enough of them, and enough workers, and enough very talented, veteran, old heads to know there's a certain way that things are done. And yeah, you can know things and you can hypothesize on things back then, but you couldn't flat out give it away. You couldn't go and call somebody from a payphone in Montreal, the day that the screw job happened, and be like, hey, Conrad Thompson, I need you to get to your computer right now and tell this story. This is what's happening. Boom. That's how Conrad got started.
And there you have it. Just even on being on someone else's podcast, you've already given us a little bit of insight and a great example of what you were just talking about. It's one of those things where if you listen closely enough, you might catch it, but only if you're paying attention. And I love that about you, and I love that about the shows that you've done. It does lead me to my next question. Because you've been around it for so long, these days it's probably never crossed your mind, or you don't care. But, speaking as someone who is kind of just starting his journey with this kinds of thing, I would be so worried about tiptoeing that line and treading so lightly. Did you ever have a moment during those early days where you might have said something and you thought to yourself, oh, was that too much? Did I pull back a little too far? Or was it always just a matter of, hey, I'm going to say what I'm going to say and we'll deal with the consequences later?
So at no time was I ever just Chris Tidwell. I was, and Donnie is the one that named me Notorious TID because I made a joke, a very horrible joke that garnered me that name and made everybody go, oh my God. And it just kind of stuck and it steamrolled from there and grew into its own thing. I said from day one, if we're going to do this, I'm going balls out. Let's see how far we can push this. Fuck it. If nobody's going to stop us and nobody's going to tell us what we can and cannot say, we're going to say it. This is how we find out. You know what I mean? I look at it as being pioneers because it was because of the stupid things that we said. Maybe it's the things that you can't say now, you know? I learned a long time ago that if you give me a mic and tell me that there's no line, then there's no line. Plain and simple. Because I think that everything from the point of even what we're doing right now, having a podcast, talking on your podcast about professional wrestling at its secular levels, even that in itself is a work. This in itself is a performance. This in itself is you're trying to do something with the product. So as long as you're living inside of that world, inside of that professional wrestling world, it's professional wrestling, brother. It's all professional wrestling. So words don't mean shit. That's the number one thing. So say what you want, do what you want. If somebody's going to come at you because you think that you said something stupid, fuck it. That's their problem. Let that deal. That's future Adam's problem. But right now, in the moment, be in the moment, be in the ring, be in the sense, be like in the spot. Don't worry about what's going to happen behind the curtain later on. That's for later on.
So, of course, that does lead me to the question, with you being so unfiltered, there must have been some people who had some problems with things you ever said. Did anyone ever call you out or confront you? And are you able to share any of those stories with us?
No, nobody did. Not one person. Not one person. This is the other thing that I'm going to tell you right now, Adam, and I'm going to tell you this, and you can look me dead in the eyes, zoom all the way in on this one, do whatever editing you want. Professional wrestling is full of pussies, plain and simple. Everybody, especially from the time that I started, because at the time that I started is when the internet started to really explode too, right? So then message boards started. And then like, yeah, you could be a keyboard tough guy all you want. Wrestling is full of them. There are not very many tough guys, tough people. Well, maybe a few more now because the numbers game. But back then, no, there wasn't. There wasn't. I wouldn't get called out on stuff. I would just get left alone. That was the thing, right? Because, but I also, from the people that I learned from and the way that I learned the business, that was the way that it was. It was very much a respect thing. And just, if I would never say something to somebody because it was unwarranted or just to be a dickhead about it, it was always for a reason, and it was always to protect the business. Because inside of the wrestling world, it's about the business. You got to live it.
So then that kind of leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask about, which was that at which point or at what point in time did you kind of realize, oh, wow, this is a thing. Like, this isn't just something that me and my buddy are kind of doing and dicking around. This is like catching fire. This is really starting to go somewhere. What was that moment for you?
I never really did. It was never really a thing like that for me. I always kind of looked at it. It was a lot of fun, even after I had left. And then Donnie got bought out of the show, and it continued on with Jeff and Dan Lavransky. And then Jeff left, and then Jason Agnew came along, and and it just kind of blew up each time a little bit more and a little bit more because wrestling blew up more and more and more. Right? There just seemed to be more of it. Once I left it, I didn't look back. I didn't look back one bit. I was gone and on to my own thing. Like I said, this was very much how my upbringing was. Once you leave the city, right? You're out. I call it, it's my own personal pullout method, Adam. This is my pullout method, right? When it happens and you're done, you pull out of town.
The only thing that I would say in, I guess, response to that is, but what you actually ended up doing with your pullout method was actually spawning a lot more, because now you got, guys like me on a microphone all because of you. So I don't know if let's just say this. Maybe it wasn't the most effective method. Let's just say that then, maybe in that case.
I'm over with moms.
I mean, that's the demographic you want to go for, really. So I do have to ask real quick then. So if you had left that behind, what inspired you to get back in the game? Because you are now in a big way.
I don't know. Well, okay. Oh boy. You really want to know? You really
I asked.
Okay, let's see how we can do this here because I got to be very careful about this because there are. So, my boy Brady, little Brady Wedham, approaches me along with Randy Charpentier, okay, who does the draw. Wait, draw raw straws, draw straws raw. He does a podcast as well, and it's hilarious, and they're hilarious, and I always fuck up the name, which makes it even more hilarious to me. And Brady, of course, over at TPL Media now. Um, they came to me and they were like, "Hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but live audio wrestling is available." I'm like, "What do you mean available?" And they're like, "Nobody owns it." I was like, that's interesting. And they're like, "Would you?" And I was like, "I don't know. Let me think about that." And then they called me back and we had another conversation about it. And I was like, "You know what? Yeah." They talked me into it. And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So we bought it. And then after buying it, somebody else wanted it. And then somebody else's lawyer sent us a letter, of which I went, "That's cute." And we called them and said no, because the lawyer was one of these like, "Hey, you've been using something that is ours." And it's like, actually, it's not. And if you'd like to have a conversation about it, we're more than willing to have a conversation about it, but we will not be told what to do, plain and simple. And so I just kept going. And then a little while after that, I got another one. And I said, "No, listen, here's the paperwork. It's owned. You don't own it. If you want to sit down, we could talk about it." And that person kind of moved on to other things and started their own promotions up again.
And speaking of moving on, we'll have to move on to another episode because there's the bell. The time limit has elapsed, and it means it's a draw. No winner, but hey, that just means we'll have to have you back on again sometime. I cannot tell you what an honor this was, truly, legitimately. When I say that you are a legend, I mean that in every sense of the word, sir. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really hope to have you back on again someday. This was awesome. I hope we do it again soon.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's never about me. It's always about Satan.
And I can't think of a better way to end the episode than that.